Welcome back to the 211 Fast Break podcast. Been a week, a little rusty, I guess. I'm Sean Kennedy. We're recording this on a Wednesday, October 2nd. Joined again by our NFL handicapper Dan Erda, coming off an impressive 4-1-1 week in Week 4. Dan, how did you feel about that performance?
Well, your speaking might be a little rusty. It doesn't look like my picking's been the last 3 weeks or so.
No, top-notch effort to start off the NFL season, around 68% through 4 weeks.
Which is not possible to maintain at all.
Well, we'll see what we can do. So let's go over our Week 4 picks that you made and talk about what happened there. We'll start with the Bills-Ravens game, which the Bills won 23-20. You had them getting 3.5 points, and you said on the podcast you thought they had a chance to win outright, and that's pretty much what ended up happening.
Every once in a while, there's a team you just kind of know. You kind of just really understand the team and know what's going to happen. And so far, I've called two Bills upset wins. I've been right both times. I think I can just tell when this team is going to come to play. When they're a team when they're at home, they're very tough to beat. When they're on the road, they're going to struggle. In fact, I didn't make this a play this week, but I mean, I would not be surprised at all if they lose pretty handily to the Browns tomorrow night in Cleveland. But it's hard to go into Buffalo and win. It's a lot colder. It's not a friendly environment, and the Bills. I mean, their secondary is a mess right now. Their running backs a mess right now. So going into Cleveland is going to be a pain. But there's going to be a couple of games I'm probably going to pick them later in the year where they face good opponents at home, and they're not going to be as easy of an opponent as those teams think they're going to be.
Yeah, certainly seemed to be a different team at home at Ralph Wilson Stadium as opposed to on the road. Joe Flacco with 5 interceptions in that game. It seems like he might be spending a little too much time worrying about his Mighty Wings commercials and not enough time reading defenses. And the Ravens only attempted 9 rushing attempts in the game, which was very curious play calling. The Ravens typically, historically, a defense and control the clock team, and now they have Flacco throwing 50 times a game. Is that something that you would like to see them doing?
Well, I definitely think that Ray Rice, even though he was on the field, I don't think he's 100%. If he wasn't, I think he was a little gimpy. If not, there's no excuse. Even if he was gimpy, there's really still no excuse for that split. They won a Super Bowl pretty much by being a defense slash run, and then Flacco came through in the playoffs when needed. But now I mean, that was like an Andy Reid game yesterday on Sunday.
Yeah, just very, very pass heavy. They were pretty much in the game for the majority of it. Not really in a situation where they needed to just constantly pass the ball to get back in it. They could still have a balanced attack. So something to keep an eye on going forward. But Bills won that one, so that was one victory for you in Week 4. Moving on to the next one, which was your lone loss of the week. Those Cincinnati Bengals, which seems like they're your team this year for better or for worse. You had them covering 4.5, I believe it was, at the post of the line, and they actually ended up losing outright at Cleveland, 17-6. What happened there?
Cleveland was in control the entire game. That I was so wrong. The Sharps kept on betting that. It actually closed at 3.5. The Sharps were all over Cleveland, and that was the game where I just thought that I was right and everyone else was wrong. Turns out I was not. And what I said about Buffalo is a team that I kind of get. I'm starting to worry that Cincy might be the opposite there because it seems that I think they're a little better than they are. I still have a lot of hope for them, as you'll see with my picks for this week that are coming up. But man, they looked bad. It's a divisional game. The Browns play hard-nosed football. The team seem to be inspired now when everyone wrote them off for dead. So they are playing very hard and crazy because after tomorrow night they could be 3-2 and right in the hunt for the division with Ryan Hoyer and Chris Agbayana or whoever these guys are who no one's ever heard of. But you know what? This team's showing up week in and week out, and I made a mistake. I took them lightly, and I'm probably not going to do that again anytime soon.
Yeah, they certainly have a very formidable defensive unit, and got playmakers with Jordan Cameron, Josh Gordon. So they have some definite pieces, and they're favored this week. It's just crazy to think that they could go 3-2, and they're currently in the tie for the division lead. When 2 weeks ago everyone was talking about how they were tanking the season and trying to go 0-16. So certainly the surprise story of the year in the NFL. But unfortunately for you, that was a game that you had them losing. So
And there was no heartbreak there, no
no,
bad beat at the end. That was just from the first drive of the game. The Browns were in complete control. That
yep.
was a bad pick.
Yeah, that was a 60-minute effort from Cleveland. So the most bizarre play of the week happened in the Seahawks Texans game. You had the Texans at +3, which looked like it was going to be a lock throughout most of the game. They jumped out to a 20-3 lead in the first half, but then, I mean, everybody's seen it by now. The Matt Schaub off his back foot crossfield pick six by Richard Sherman that got Seattle back into the game. And did your heart sink when you saw that play happen?
It was brutal. I try to be positive. I try to be happy with the fact that I got that line early at +3, so I pushed the game. Whereas that game was all the way down to pick 'em for a little bit on Sunday. A lot of people who took the Texans ended up losing, so I was happy I didn't lose. But man, that was such a heartbreaker when Matt Schaub threw that ball. It's just, what was he thinking?
Yeah, you would think an experienced veteran quarterback like Schaub would just know in that situation that the smart play, if you don't have your receiver on your first read and guys are coming after you like that, just slide down, take the loss, and punt it away and make Seattle go the length of the field. You're still up 7. Your defense was playing phenomenal all game. Russell Wilson was struggling in the passing game. J.J. Watt was a warrior out there. You saw
His bloody face.
his bloodied face. He was doing everything possible to have Houston come away with the win in that one. So just a real poor judgment play by Matt Schaub, and people actually burned his jerseys out in the parking lot after the game, Texans fans. So certainly the public opinion is swaying against Schaub right now after that one.
There's a popular restaurant in Houston that just started selling the Matt Schaub Pick Six burger. Or I guess I don't know. I guess you pick 6 toppings and put on it, but they're actually selling that, and that's what they're calling it.
Wow, that's creative marketing by them, and I like to see that out of a local chain like that. It's funny, although if you're a Houston fan in the Houston area, not really something you want coming to mind when you're going out for a burger and maybe watching a game.
No, it's not. And you know what? It's really becoming evident that in an era of quarterbacks, Matt Schaub is always going to be the guy to play good enough to get you to the playoffs, and he's never going to be able to win the big games. That was a big game. They were about to beat one of the best teams in the NFL. They were at home, and they completely choked it away. Aside from that interception, they didn't even score in the second half. And they did one of the cardinal sins, in my opinion, which is they took the foot off the pedal, and they were trying so hard for the second half to avoid a mistake like the one they ended up making that they didn't add to their lead. They let Seattle chip away at it. And no, you can't do that nowadays. You need a quarterback that's going to be like, you know what, this is my team. We're going to win this game. This is a big game. I got this. And you need a playmaker. And Matt Schaub's just not that kind of quarterback.
Yeah, if you're going to be the quote unquote game manager, then things you have to avoid are those big game altering turnovers or negative plays. And that was certainly not the case in week 4 for him and the Texans. So 1-1-1 on those first 3 games. Going on to something we kind of had differing opinions on. That was the Eagles-Broncos over-under, which went all the way up to 58. It was actually, I mentioned last time, it was the second highest total since 2004. The first highest was a Saints-Patriots game in 2009, which actually went under with the Saints winning 38-17. So that was kind of my feeling going into that one, where teams could put up a 38-17 score, which is a really high-scoring game, and still be under just because of how high that total was. Then, of course, Denver pretty much just about almost covered that over themselves because Eagles look like traffic cones out there on defense.
Yeah, the Eagles' defense is unlike any I've ever actually seen. I don't see any reason to stop playing their overs because I don't think their offense is that bad. And I actually think they're going to win this week, and I think it's going to be another shootout. Right now, they can't stop anybody. So if they find a team where they can score where you think they can score a few touchdowns on, just keep playing these overs. Keep on doing it. And I always say you ride a train until it crashes, which in life is probably a terrible idea. But
Yeah.
in gambling,
Maybe just ride it until your stop comes up.
one adage I've always liked is if you bet on a streak, you win every time until it ends. If you bet against the streak, you can only win one time. So keep on betting these Denver overs. The Eagles actually had an under a couple weeks ago against the Chiefs, I believe, right?
Yeah, that did go under that one.
But these Denver games are just flying over the totals. That's something. It's not one of my featured plays this week, but sure can't advise taking the under.
Yeah, Denver actually averaging 44.8 points per game, which is more than both the Buccaneers and the Jaguars have scored combined in every game this season. So I think that's pretty much says it all about the state of the Denver offense right now. They're a juggernaut, and looking forward to what that Denver-Jacksonville line a week from now is going to settle at, or early indications show it's going to be around 27, which would be the highest spread in NFL history.
Well, this week's game is very interesting too. A lot of the sharps who I like to follow on Twitter and who I follow on that site I told you about, cappingthegame.com, a lot of them are all about Dallas this week because if you really think about it, who's Denver played? They played nobody. And now they're on the road against really the first halfway decent team. I mean, who they had? They had the Eagles, who've been terrible, the Giants, who've been terrible, the Raiders, who've been atrocious, and the Ravens, who
Played them hard for the first half of that game. It was a close game until the second half.
Right, but this week for me is going to be a watch and learn because if they show up in Dallas and really put another whooping on that team, then you know that this team could go 16-0.
Yeah, one of these litmus test games for Denver. Not we all know they're a good team, but are they the type of team that's just going to steamroll the entire league like the Pats did when they went 16-0 in that regular season a few years back, or is it a type of game where they're going to really lay it on the bottom tier teams in the league and then just play some competitive games with the better teams? So that'll be interesting to watch this week with Denver and Dallas. But you certainly won the over handily last week in that one. Moving on to your three-team teaser you had last week, you had the Chargers getting 10 points, moving that up to a plus 12. You had the Cardinals getting 10 points, which moved that up to, I believe, a plus 13. And then the other one was the Colts, moving that down to where it was practically a pick-em. And all three of those games with those changed point spreads, they covered very easily for you.
I should have just parlayed the three spreads in general.
Yeah, that they all covered Colts against the Jags. They certainly covered very easily as the Jags. They just don't look like they can do anything offensively, and they actually traded away their starting left tackle this week to Baltimore for 4th and 5th round picks in Eugene Monroe. So it only looks to be getting worse in the short term for Jacksonville.
If I'm Maurice Jones-Drew, I quit for the year. I say I'm not playing another down this year.
Yeah, it's certainly something to consider if you're a player, and it looks like that's the guy that's protecting you pretty much up there on the offensive line. So if you're a running back and you have a limited shelf life as a player, you don't want these guys to just barrel through your would-be blockers and just shorten your NFL career pretty much coming into the backfield.
Especially a guy like MGD whose contract's up after this year. He has a chance to go sign with a team, and maybe after spending all these years on the cellar dwellers in Jacksonville, he can go to a team that has a chance to compete. But that's only if his body's still intact, which right now, with that line and trading away their best lineman, might not be.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting situation there in Jacksonville. One other thing from that game I wanted to point out is that home team underdogs of greater than 8 points had actually covered 23 of 25 against the spread. And, of course, Jacksonville did not, so they certainly bucked that trend. Definitely one of the worst teams we've seen in the NFL in quite some time.
Jacksonville is above, there's no trend that's going to convince me that Jacksonville is a good play.
They're untrendable at this point.
Right now, I mean, I'm not going to play them. I'm not going to bet against them this week because the Rams suck too. But I can't ever see any situation in which I'm actually going to bet on Jacksonville.
Yeah, I wouldn't either, and I think a lot of the public is in that same situation. They just don't show any signs of life on offense and limited resistance on the defensive side. So the other two legs of that teaser were the Chargers, who were small underdogs in that game, but actually ended up winning outright, scoring 17 or the final 20 points of the game to win that 30-21. And Philip Rivers had 35 for 42 for 401 yards. It's actually the most accurate performance in NFL history for a player who threw for greater than 400 yards. So all the great NFL quarterbacks that have been putting up huge totals in recent years, Breeze, Rodgers, and Peyton Manning, Rivers is actually the top of that accuracy category for that statistic. And he's enjoying kind of a renaissance season this year.
He's having a great year so far. He looks to be thrilled with the fact that Norv Turner's gone. What's his name? His coach is the guy from Arizona last year. Who's I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Their current coach is Mike McCoy.
Oh no, the coordinator, the guy from Arizona.
I'm blanking.
He's good with quarter. I mean, it's just the whole system looks a lot better. He's not even doing this with superstar receivers. He has Antonio Gates, who's old but still productive. And then if you look on the receiving line, you got Eddie Royal doing all right, Vincent Brown, but none of these guys are studs. Danny Woodhead's been really good.
Yeah, Danny Woodhead filling that kind of Darren Sproles role within their offense, where he's just a matchup nightmare out of the backfield. He's catching a lot of balls, and just a tough thing for defensive coordinators to account for when they're moving around like they are. So between him and Royal out of the slot, they're giving Rivers a lot of good options for those check downs that McCoy has instilled with the offense this season. So San Diego's certainly one of those teams that they had some pieces in recent years, never seemed to put it all together for a quality campaign. This may be the year that they are doing that. And finally, the last leg of that teaser was the Cardinals. They were also small underdogs, and they also won outright thanks to two Patrick Peterson interceptions on Mike Glennon. I didn't really like what I saw from Mike Glennon, which wasn't really a surprise given how raw he is as a prospect.
Yes, his first drive was very good, and I was like, I actually got a little scared. I'm like, oh man, is this guy going to come in and just play one of those like crazy? You guys don't have any film only games and play way out of his mind. And luckily, that did not happen. The first drive he threw a touchdown to Mike Williams, and I don't think he threw another touchdown the rest of the game. He looked raw. He was picked off twice, and it's a disaster for Tampa Bay. Continue to bet against them. I don't see myself betting on them.
Yeah, 13-10 final in that as Arizona won. Just Arizona didn't look good either. Carson Palmer also threw two interceptions. I just think it was two bad teams going at it, and Tampa Bay was the worst team. So didn't really give me a lot of confidence in Arizona going forward that they did come back to pull that out. So
Was that the last play from last week? Because if not, that'd be a good segue into this week. Or do we have more from last week still?
we have one more to
Well,
go.
we're going to come back to Arizona.
Yeah, we'll come back to them after we talk about the Saints' victory against Dolphins in Monday Night Football, which was a 38-17 final. You had the Saints giving 6.5 points in that one, and they were just in control throughout the game as Drew Brees and Sean Payton being reunited seems to have rejuvenated that Saints offense.
Yeah, and it's kind of exactly what I thought, where the Miami Dolphins are having a really nice year. They're showing that they can play, they can win some games, but they're not in the caliber of, or in the class of team yet, where they can hang with an elite team on the road in a Monday night game. But for some reason, I have no stats to back this up. I just love betting on home dome teams in prime time.
Yeah, they seem to just the crowd gets, especially against a young quarterback like Tannehill. He had four turnovers the other night, and it just he didn't look settled in the game. You got Rob Ryan's defense was really coming after him. I believe they had four sacks in the game to go along with those four turnovers, and just a tough environment for a young quarterback to go into. And those dome teams, they're built for speed. They're built for that turf, and the offense just goes. And it was working. Every aspect of the game was working for New Orleans the other night, and pretty much exactly what you called going into that one. So a 4-1-1 week four, very impressive 80% winning percentage. We're going to move on to week five games, and we'll start with that Arizona game you just alluded to. You like them at +2 at home against Carolina.
One thing I think about Arizona is I think that Arizona is the kind of team that, whether they're playing a really, really good team or a team like Tampa Bay that's really bad, they're never going to get blown out, and I don't think they're ever really going to blow out another team. For some reason, they seem to always play up or down to competition. I think they have talent. I think in their home field, they're going to give Cam Newton fits. Patrick Peterson, I hope, will take Steve Smith out of the game. So if Cam Newton wants to win this game, he's going to have to throw it to guys like Greg Olsen, Brandon LaFell, guys who don't really scare you that much. And just from Arizona is not an easy place to go into and play. And I mean, I'm not sold on Carolina. They beat the Giants, and I'm sold on Carolina not being good, and I'm sold on the Giants being terrible, which is another thing we'll talk about later. But I'm not. I've watched all the Panthers games so far, and I watched them in the preseason game against the Eagles, which obviously doesn't mean anything because it's preseason. But the team just doesn't have much chemistry, and I don't think that they should be laying points on the road to anyone aside from a bottom caliber team. And I don't think Arizona's quite a bottom caliber team.
Gotta say, this was the one pick of yours for week five that I really disagree with. I think Carolina wins this, and here's my reasoning. They're coming off a bye. They've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game, and they're really close to being a 3-0 team. Week one, they played Seattle tough, and D'Angelo Williams was actually going in for a go-ahead touchdown, and he fumbled. Then week two, Ron Rivera doesn't go for it on 4th and 1, and instead opts to go kick a field goal. And if they convert a 4th and 1 there, they ice the game. They can kneel down and not let the Bills have that comeback victory. And then they beat the Giants 38-0. And say what you want about how bad the Giants are, beating an NFL team 38-0 takes a certain caliber of skill and talent on the team. So I don't think Arizona's shown me that they're a good team. I think they're just the type of team that's going to beat bad teams every once in a while. So I really like Carolina in this one.
Well, we got a disagreement last time this happened last
Yeah,
week. I won, maybe, well, hopefully not, but maybe we'll even up this time.
yeah, we'll see. You certainly won the Denver over pretty handily, so we'll see if our kind of disagreement on this one will even out in my favor.
Tell you this much: if Arizona does win, it's going to be because of their wide receivers. So their running game is in shambles right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's Rashard Mendenhall seems to be on his last legs, and their offensive line has been a problem for them for years, and both in pass blocking and in the run block.
I'll make a bold prediction: Andre Ellington scores a touchdown on Sunday.
I think that's certainly a possibility. He's doing a lot of good things for them. I know that the coaches vouch for him being as a potential every down kind of player. So I like him. I like him in fantasy, and I like him in real life too. So you like Arizona in that game +2. I like Carolina, but you're the NFL handicapper, so Arizona +2 it is.
Well, hopefully, I won't be eating crow this time next week.
Yeah, we'll see. So the next one you have Cincinnati. You like as a pick'em at home against the Patriots. And is this simply due to the loss of Vince Wilfork? What did you see here after you went with Cincy last week and they let you down?
Like I said, they might be my kryptonite. If they lose again this week, I might have to look long and hard about crossing their name off of my list of potential teams to bet on for a little while. But first off, they come home after a really bad loss, and I do think that they're good enough to come to be like, we need to win this game. This is a bounce back week for us. We completely shit the bed last week, and we're going to come back and put forth the best effort in front of the home crowd. The loss of Vince Wilfork, I think, is very big. Not only is he a great player, he's the leader of that defense. And I mean, he was pretty much the quarterback of that defense. It's going to be a crippling loss. And at the same time, I mean, as impressive as New England was on Sunday night, they're a pretty fraudulent 4-0. They're not that good of a team. They still have injury problems aside from Wilfork. We don't know if Gronk's playing. He might, but
I think they're projecting a Week 6 return for
a
him
week
now.
six return.
It's pretty certain he's going to be out for this week.
And yeah, overall, I just think this is a game where Cincinnati is going to come out and make a statement that we're a good team. We're contenders, not only in our division, but we could win a playoff game or two. And if not, then I will backtrack off them and I'll stop having faith in them. But I think this is the week they really prove their point.
Yeah, I'm with you just because of the Wilfork loss on that defensive side of the ball. I know the ESPN's and they've been touting all week about how they're over a yard worse against the run with him in the game, but also in their career, in Wilfork's career when he's with the Patriots, every yard per play when he's in the game they give up 3.6, and then when he's not in the game it's over 5. So there's huge disparity with him on and off the field, and I think they're not a strong enough defensive unit to overcome his loss. So while ordinarily I'd go with New England, just because last week was a similar situation. Everybody thought Atlanta's at home. They really need this one. New England hadn't really had a signature win up until then. This would be a similar situation to that, and New England came out on top and looked good last week, and Kimbrel Tompkins and Brady kind of seem to be gelling a little bit. There's a chance Amendola is back this week. So the offense is certainly making strides, but I just can't confidently think that the defense is going to be able to do much without Wilfork in there.
The X factor this week is absolutely going to be Giovanni Bernard. If he has an explosive game and he takes that role of like the running back who carries the ball 10, 12 times, but mostly catches a lot of passes, catches some screens, stuff like that. If he has an explosive game, that's what they're going to need to win this game because it can't just be Dalton chucking it up to AJ Green.
No, Bernard is certainly a talent, and I'd like to see more from him within the Cincinnati game plan going forward. I think they're maybe ready to loosen the reins on him a little bit after this 2-2 start to the season. The next game you had was your over for the week, and
two overs for the week.
Oh yes, one of your 2 overs for the week, and you're going with the Detroit Green Bay game, which is over 52, and I mean, you've been riding the overs so far this season, and here's another instance of it.
I mean, the only over I'd really gotten screwed on was a Detroit over. I'm hoping that they make up for it this week. First off, I'm sorry if you're listening or reading this now for the first time, because that's up to 53.5 last time I checked. I did post this on Twitter a couple days ago at 52, and I got it at the open. But I mean, I like it up to 55. I don't think either of these teams is going to stop the other. Detroit's one of those over teams I always like to look for. And Green Bay, I mean, look at how bad Cincinnati looked last week against Cleveland. They put up 34 points against Green Bay. In fact, two of Green Bay's opponents have put up 34 points. And with the offense clicking in Detroit, I think it's a shootout.